here's a question that we can each ask ourselves. What changes in you when you choose to be present, even in your darker moments? That's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at that resurrection of letting go of that sense of separation. And that the song that played after Sandy's wonderful prayer, I would like for us to each say that. I know we can't unmute right now, but what I would like is for each of you to just say this out loud. I'll say it and you can repeat it. There is only one life. That this life is God's life. This life is perfect. This life is my life now. Wow. And if you said it out loud, there's a power that happens when you go through that sequence. There's only one life. That's God's life. That life is perfect. And that is my life right now. Because what that does is it brings me back into the now. It brings me back into that recognition that there is this presence. And when we say that there's only one life and that life is God, or is God's life, if we stop there, it's easy to continue to feel separate. Because in this particular moment that I'm in right now, and I'm not saying that that's true in this moment for me, but in whatever moment I'm in, it may not feel like this is God's life or that it's even a perfect life. But when we go on to say, this is my life now, that's what Sandy was talking about. That's what the readings were about. That when we recognize that this is my life, that I am that unique, individualized expression of this power and presence that creates all that is, that's a big wow. Because that couples my life with this whole concept of God, of one life, of oneness, of wholeness, of Indra's web, of from the Native American, the web of life that we live on, that if whatever I do affects everything, whatever out there also affects me. And so what we're looking at this month is becoming this. But Holmes, what Holmes says, Ernest Holmes, our founder, says, is that we are not becoming this life, but we are in this now. So we, it's one of those where we can't really practice to become because we already are. But what we can do is resurrect ourselves, is to bring ourselves to that understanding that there is no separation. If you go out to our website or the CSL website, you'll see what we believe. And one of those is that I have it right here, that heaven is within us. So this divine presence is within us, heaven, and we experience it to the extent that we are aware of it. And that's what we're talking about, the resurrection. That's what we're talking about, is that we can't practice becoming, we already are. And what we're doing is we're practicing allowing that to more fully express itself. Because what we can do in this human condition that we're in, we're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, and we're in human form, that we can feel separate based on what's going on in our physical experience, what's happening in our heads, all those voices that can come up and tell us all the reasons why, we're not good enough, we're not, whatever it is. So what we're talking about is living with this presence, becoming more of that presence. And the Christ consciousness in us rising. And if the word Christ bothers you, think of it as it's not a person. What really hit me one time was when a spiritual mentor I had said, don't think of it as necessarily as this guy we call Jesus, think of it as a job description. So the Christ consciousness is that consciousness that understands oneness, that wholeness, not understands it, it lives it, it is it. That we are all one, that we are all creations, that we really are on that web of the Native Americans talk about, or the Hindus talk about, is Indra's web. There's an author, Mark Nepo, who's written many books, 7,000 Ways to Listen, and in his book, The Endless Practice, Becoming Who You Were Born to Be, he says, the point of experience is not to escape life, but to live it. Each of us carries some wisdom waiting to be discovered at the center of our experience. And everything we meet, if faced and held, reveals a part of that wisdom. We have a language of truth growing in our heart that only living can decode. Truth is a seed hidden in the days until watered by our experience. And so that's the essence of what we're talking about, is that there is this presence within us. There is that divine seed that we all are, that is the core of our being. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. It's my life. But I can get lost. I can get lost in that. I can get lost in that, in the human condition, and I can allow myself to suffer. I can feel like I'm suffering. I am suffering, and people around me are suffering. And as I think it was said in our discussion before we got started today, between the meditation and actually getting started, it was I think, Sandy, you said it, that it was it was that there's this it's hard to sometimes wrap my head around, this is my version of it, wrap my head around this whole concept of oneness and wholeness of God. And what I need to do is to bring myself back to remembering that whatever I'm seeing, whatever I'm experiencing, is God in form. So there is this seed within us, and it's waiting to be watered by our experiences. This seed, to reveal more of it. So from that sense, we are becoming this. We are in that revelation. We are in that resurrection. We are allowing ourselves to be more of having this understanding of the heaven that lives within us. But when we get lost, what can we do to bring us back to it? How can we practice this? Well, what I love is the fact that in this teaching, we have a whole big toolbox of spiritual practices that will bring us back. But what I want to talk about first is a concept that really helped me to understand the importance of these spiritual practices. Because I can have a tendency to say, well, I don't have time. Oh, I don't have time to do that. I want to do it, but I don't have time. Well, when I start to think about spiritual practice as putting money, if you will, into my spiritual bank account, the more I do those spiritual practices, the more of a bank account, if you will, I have. The more, if thinking of it in terms of money, I'm putting away for that rainy day, for that day when I'm feeling vulnerable, I've got lost in the human condition, and have forgotten that divine part of myself. So I want to talk about this from the perspective of Easter and Passover, because happy Easter to those of you who celebrate Easter. Myself, my grandkids are out looking for eggs right now. And for those of you who participate in Passover, so so I'm going to start with Passover. And Passover, there's the lamb's blood that gets put on the door to prevent death from coming in and taking the firstborn. And that's when the Israelites escape. They can leave their bondage. And that's the same for us. Because that firstborn is this divine self that we have within. And as we do our spiritual practices, it's like the lamb's blood put on the door so that we can protect that. We can allow that to more fully express itself. And as the reading that Sandy did, talking about that the resurrection is that letting go of that sense of separation, of that rising, of that dying, the sense of separation dying, and this consciousness of knowing, walking out of the tomb, rolling that stone of our prison of human suffering out of the way, and allow that seed is within us to be more watered by our experiences, to grow and become this this greater expressions of the divine that we are. And one of the things I love about this teaching is we have so many spiritual practices that we can do. We have affirmative prayer is one of them, and the particular one that we do, we call spiritual mind treatment. And it's not like it's a beautiful way to bring yourself into that consciousness and declare what it is you know is truth about yourself. We also have meditation and contemplation and journaling, and you can get it in art and nature walks, and we can just tune in to what we're doing right now and be very present. And we'll talk about that in a second here, because one of the things we want to make sure we do is to keep it fresh. Don't treat it as a routine. If you have an affirmation or a prayer that you say or read it as if it's new every day. Every time you read it, let it really wash over you, sink into you, and feel what it is you're saying in that prayer or that affirmation. Or if you're doing art, just allow yourself to immerse yourself in it and just let that intuitive spark create itself on paper or in clay or however you may express yourself with art. It becomes a conscious practice. And what that does is it helps us to realize these spiritual principles that we're immersed in. And as and then what happens is the heaven that lives within us, we become more aware of it, and therefore we experience more of it. So I want to look at one spiritual practice in particular, which we call mindfulness. When we think about mindfulness, I don't know how when I think about mindfulness, I think about being very present to what I'm doing. But to me, it goes beyond that, because what this is it's creative energy in motion. And it's my looking beyond exactly what my eyes are seeing, what my ears are hearing, as Mark Nepo talks about in 7,000 Ways to Listen. It's listening beyond the words. It's seeing beyond what the effect is in front of me right there. And as Sandy talked about before we started our service today, it's understanding that whatever I'm experiencing, God is there. It's an expression of God, and I need to find that. And that is a conscious practice. And the more I practice it, the more I become aware of there's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life right now. And this conscious practice is rooted in faith and feeling and surrender. And it increases our faith and increases, some people like the word trust. It increases your trust in the divine. The more we become aware of it and feel it, we begin to feel those qualities, the divine qualities alive in us, and then we activate them. And through the action of what we call the law, things just start to change. And when it becomes this daily practice, it adds into our spiritual bank account. And what it does is it starts to slowly shape who we are in this world. Now, our founding minister and one of my big mentors, Reverend Dr. Trish Hall, who I think just joined us. Good to see you, Trish. Um, one thing I learned from her is the difference between what I am and who I am. Because what I am is a spiritual being having a spiritual experience. That's the what. That can't change. That is there. The who I am can change. The who I am is how I express myself in this human form. And that is changeable. And doing this work is how I change that and allow the what I am to more fully express itself. There's a book called Practicing the Presence by Joel Goldsmith, who was a contemporary of Ernest Holmes. I think they overlapped. I know that. And what Goldsmith says in Practicing the Presence is the degree of spiritual consciousness which we attain can be measured by the extent to which we relinquish our dependence on the external world of form and place our faith and confidence in something greater than ourselves, in the infinite invisible, which can surmount any and every obstacle. It is an awareness of the grace of God. We can measure it by how much do we depend on the external world of form, what's outside of me, versus putting our faith and confidence in that greater than I am, infinite, invisible. Well, I know for me, sometimes I feel broken, which can cause me to feel that separation. And what I need to go back to, and I invite you to come with me on that, is that being broken does not mean I'm lost. Because suffering, well, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And what suffering can do is wake us up. When I recognize I'm suffering, I can wake myself up, and that suffering will reveal what matters most. And if I go back to Mark Nepo talking about the truth is a seed hidden, waiting to be watered by our experience. Then it becomes an opportunity to water those seeds of truth, to allow that greater expression of myself to reveal itself. And so we all carry our past experience. We carry those moments of pain and confusion or grief or whatever it may be that cause our suffering. But what I invite you to entertain right now is that it does not need to define you. It does not need to define me or us. If I can take that time, if you can take that time, if we as a collective can take the time to go in and observe the pain without judgment, without bitterness, what we do is we open the doors to healing. And we can bring ourselves back into the wholeness that we are, the oneness that we are, and we can live with the presence that we truly are. We can when we start to embrace all aspects of our journey, no matter what it may look like, That includes the suffering and the dark days and the days when the voices just keep telling me how much I'm not enough. And I can look at that and I can bring it out and look at it objectively and without all the bitterness that can be there. I can change that. I can change that. And this whole concept of spiritual presence is not about avoiding that suffering and pain. It's walking through it. It's having this loving awareness and allowing the healing to happen. And I want to stress very strongly that you do not, none of us have to do this alone. Here in our community at Center for Spiritual Living Metro, we have an incredibly wonderful group of licensed spiritual practitioners who can work with each and every one of us. We also have 3 ministers who are also spiritual practitioners, who are all of us more than willing to work with you. You can also establish a prayer partner relationship with someone who you trust. And we're there. You don't have to do it alone. So as I wrap up, when we look at it, that every challenge that we have leads us closer to our truth. It does it by releasing, and when we look at it, when we can look at it objectively and we can work on it, what it does is it releases false beliefs that we have about ourselves, that are learned. They're not that. They're part of the who we are, not the what we are. And we can change that who we are. Because it can also realign us with the divine presence that we are. It'll water that seed of truth that is within us. And the concept that came to me as I was doing this was in physics, there is a, if you will, a principle that says matter cannot be destroyed. It can be redistributed, but it cannot be destroyed. E equals mc squared, if you're familiar with that one. You know what? That applies here too. Nothing is lost in spirit. Nothing is lost in spirit. And so what feels broken can be redeemed, can be resurrected by love into understanding the oneness, the wholeness that we are. So our call to action is to recognize that mindfulness and all of the spiritual practices shapes our spiritual life. The spiritual practices that we have can return us to the now. And that being broken is never the end of the story. What it actually is the beginning of becoming what and who you are. And I want to share something with you that there's a group of us who've been doing visioning to open ourselves as a whole to this greater understanding of what is Spirit's highest expression of itself as CSL Metro. And it's been interesting as I've been preparing for getting ready for the membership meeting in 2 weeks, of going through all of the responses that we've gotten from that. And it culminates for me to a statement that came this past Friday. So here's what we got. Come as you are and become who you were created to be. So come as you are. Come as that who you are right now. And become a greater expression of the what you are, of that divine, individualized, unique expression. Because we love you just as you are. And we're also love to celebrate as we each continue on this journey and express that what we are even more fully. And so in ending, I leave you, I have another quote from Practicing the Presence from Joel Goldsmith, something to remember. Love is the law of God. When we are in tune with divine love, loving whether it be friend or enemy, then love is a gentle thing bringing peace. But it is gentle only while we are in tune with it. It is like electricity. Electricity is very gentle and kind, giving light and warmth and energy, as long as the laws of electricity are obeyed. The minute they are violated or played with, electricity becomes a double-edged sword. And the law of love is as inexorable as the law of electricity. In other words, the law is always working. And so as we become more aware of what we are, as we are willing to look at our pain and our suffering, of that which doesn't look, from the human perspective, doesn't look or feel like love and peace and joy, as we can do that work and let go of that, roll the stone of I'm not good enough, I'm not whatever, I don't belong, whatever it may be, roll that stone away and allow that greater expression to come. Do our spiritual practice. Put that lamb's blood on the door so that the death doesn't come in. The death to that firstborn, our divine self. It's never going to die. It just gets hidden. It just gets buried. So let's unbury it. Let's bring it out. Bring it out in the open. It's a beautiful, beautiful here. I know it's beautiful here in Virginia. Beautiful sunny day. Let's let it out to play today. So thank you very much. That's our lesson for the day. I love each and every one of you.